Hey there YouTube, my name's Brad. Welcome back to the shop. Today's part 3 of our 2020 Breakout. We're going to be doing the 117 Stage 4 kit with Advanced Hines Big Radius Exhaust System. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe. Again, I just wanted to say that this is part 3 of the series. This is going to be the final video. If you haven't seen the others, go back and make sure that you check them out, video 1 and video 2. We already have most of the 117 kit assembled. We're just doing the rest of the assembly of the top end, rocker arms, exhaust system, and air cleaner. And I'll just pop in from time to time whenever I see important assembly notes. But thanks for watching, like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications so that you're notified when I have new videos. Alrighty, we have the whole cam chest all together, push rod tubes with push rods in them, cylinders, pistons, the heads are torqued, throttle body, injectors, breathers, lower rocker box cover, ACR. We're actually in a really good spot. We've been doing really good today. So the next thing that we need to do is to roll the engine over so that one cylinder will be on overlap, and then we'll work on the other cylinder. It doesn't matter which one you pick, front or rear, but just for example, let's do the front again. So we're looking at the intake push rod and the exhaust push rod, and then so the intake is just closing because there aren't any rocker arm assemblies on it. I'll have to apply a little bit of downward pressure. And then the exhaust just began to open. Now it's closing, and the intake is just beginning to open. So that means that the front cylinder is on overlap, which means that the rear, this rear cylinder is on the base circle. There's a little bit of resistance of how the lifters fit in the lifter guides, so you want to make sure that you push the push rods all the way down and that they're seated into the lifter. We've already cleaned the bolts on the wire wheel, so we've cleaned any type of Loctite or any of that business up. And then I put a little bit of Screamin Eagle assembly lube on the very tops of the valve stems. I like to do that. It makes me feel good. And then I like to, because it's going to be a while before oil really gets in here and like splashing around and everything, I go in here and I kind of like aim right in between the coils, give it a good few pumps, and then another couple on top. You want to make sure that you lube up your valve stem, because it can go up and down enough without getting oil on it for it to melt the valve seal, and that is no bueno. So that's the deal, you know. Heck, you know, hit it with as much oil as you want. Really, it doesn't matter. Just as long as you don't get it in a threaded hole, the more is the merrier. Alright. So everything's lubed up there. We already know that this is a cylinder that we're going to be working on, and our push rods are in the correct location. So I'm going to give them just a little extra help with a little lube, just because, you know. And then I'm going to do the fronts at this time now too, because this stuff's really sticky and it's kind of a pain in the butt to get it on your hand. Now I'm going to put the rocker arm assemblies in here and tighten them down. And then we're going to torque these bolts down to 23 through 27 foot-pounds. And then before rolling the engine over, we want to make sure that the lifters have bled down. And just like earlier, we'll know that the lifters have bled down when we're able to move the rocker arms back and forth freely. So since there isn't any upward pressure on the push rod or upward pressure from the valve spring, that's what allows us to move everything nice and easily. The last thing that I like to do is, there's normal oiling through the side to get like up through this little, I don't know if you can see, but there's like a little groove in through there. I like to get at the bottom of the groove, hit it with a little oil. I don't know if you can see that there's like a little, it's going bloop, it's going through the other side, so that we're 100% sure that oil is on this face. So like you push it all the way the other way, get to the bottom, and then force oil upwards. And then we know for sure that oil is through there. It makes me feel good. So then we'll pull the rocker arms back this way and go to the other side. See if I can get you in for a close-up. Here is a super duper close-up. So like we're getting to the bottom, and you can see it's forcing oil up through the other side. And then likewise on the intake rocker arm. I don't know, it just makes me feel good knowing that everything is lubricated, that is going to be lubricated ultimately. Just it's lubricated now, so cool. So let's roll the engine back over and do the front. So now we're finished with the rear. We're going to go to the front, but we verified that the lifters have bled down. We've done our little fun little oiling deal. So now we're going to roll the engine over till this cylinder is on overlap. Alright, so the exhaust valve is just open. It's closing, and the intake is just opening. That means that the rear cylinder is on overlap, so the front cylinder is going to be on the base circle. So we do the same thing just like we did the rear. Make sure that your push rods are pushed all the way down. We'll get our rocker arms in here, torque them down, and then we'll wait for them to bleed down, and we'll do the same little oiling deal. almost forgot to lubricate my valve stems. Somebody out there is probably yelling at the TV, "Don't forget the valve stems. Shoot some oil on them." There we go. It's plenty. Alright, we've verified that everything's bled down by the rocker arms being able to slide back and forth. So we're just going to oil these things up real quick. Alright, so everything's bled and, well, everything's assembled mechanically wise, and then the last thing that I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to go over to where the radiator is, the top of the radiator. I want to put a little plug in it and then a little clamp, so that way I can crank the engine over and make sure that I see oil pressure with oil shooting out of the rocker arms. So I'm going to do that. Alright, the bikes usually don't like being started with all of the electronics disconnected. So I just have a wire running from the starter solenoid up to where I'm going to just click it on the end of the maxi fuse. Obviously, you'll want to roll the bike over in gear with the rear tire to make sure everything is moving correctly in the engine, because you don't want to just like have the starter just like start jamming metal parts together. But essentially what I like to see is verification that oil pressure is being built, and we'll see like little blurps of air and oil come out of these top rocker box or rocker arm holes. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to crank the engine over and leave you standing right here and see if you see anything. It isn't the most instantaneous thing. It does take a couple minutes for, well, it does take a little bit for it to start happening. There you can see, I don't know if you can see that other one is shooting some oil out. I felt some hit me in the cheek, so I know I know it's happening. Oh, there you can see it blurbling. Isn't that funny how like the rocker arm is just like how it has like a trough built right into it? Like, you'd think technology would have a little more, I don't know, a fancier design than just like, oh, we'll just have oil run down the chute to the rocker, you know, to the valve spring, but that's the way we do it. Alright, that's plenty long enough. You can see that there's oil there and there and there and there. So everybody's getting oil that's supposed to be having oil, so that's good. Looks like we're almost at the end of the day. The last thing that we're gonna do, actually let me see what time it is. Yeah, so it's almost the end of the day. It looks like we're gonna have just enough time to put the gaskets on and then put the top rocker box covers on and put the bolts in it. So that works out great. That means that the whole engine today was torn apart, cleaned, put it back together, and tomorrow we'll come in, we'll do the oil line, the electrical up top, the exhaust system, the air cleaner, the clutch springs, and hopefully the weather will be nice and we'll go try it out. But here we go. Let's button up the top of the engine so we can feel good going home, making sure that everything's all nice and clean. Alright, I just wanted to double check that I was going to be using the correct torque on both of these fasteners, and it said very specifically in the service manual, which makes sense, to tighten these lower ones first. Yeah, to tighten these lower ones first to 28 to 33 foot-pounds, then these upper ones to 45 to 50 foot-pounds. So that's what I'm going to do. Alright, so same thing, I wanted to make sure that I got all of these bolts torqued in the proper way, because there's obvious slop that's built into these things. So the way that the service manual wants us to do this is to fit this bracket down in there, then to tighten these ones first, 45 to 50 foot-pounds, then these ones to 45 and 50 foot-pounds, and then the ones that come through here also to 45 to 50 foot-pounds. So let's get this bracket fished up in here. Well, that was a lot easier after loosening up these screws. Easier than taking it out. Alright, it's probably impossible to tell because it's super tight fit in there, but the way in the instructions had you tighten it down are these bolts here and on the other side of the cylinder head, then these bolts, then the bolts that go through, but all of the adjustment is through these top ones. So that didn't make any sense. So I did what made sense, tighten these first, this one and the other one, then the bolts that come through and engage this bracket to this bracket, and then I tightened up these ones. So everything's all tightened up there. We have the oil line clamp on the front. We have the oil line clamp down here for the manifold. All that's tightened down. The spark plug wires are on. I'm going to crank it over one last time to build oil pressure right before we start it. So there's a little trim piece that just kind of like engages at the top here, and then it has a T27 Torx down at the bottom. I'm going to pop that on. I'm going to run some of our alcohol-based parts cleaner over anything that has a light amount of oil on it, blow that dry, and then we'll be able to start on the exhaust system and the air cleaner and put the base map in it. So here we go. Here we go. We're all ready for the first startup. I've already cleaned the pipes, so everything's nice and clean there. The rest of the bike is going to get washed and fluffed and buffed before the customer gets it. But I just put the spark plugs in it. We haven't cranked it over anymore since the last time that you saw it. So let's start it up and see what it sounds like. Well, you probably can't hear anything because it's so loud that I'm imagining it just blew out the microphone for the GoPro. So let's put you up on my helmet and we'll take it around for a test ride, get it nice and warm, and then check the oil on it. And hopefully we'll be all buttoned up with this project. But it's looking good. that completes the installation of our 2020 Stage 4 117 kit from that Breakout. I learned a little bit more about Softails than I knew before, as far as like how that electrical caddy swung out of the way and the top oil cooling line, so that's fun, I guess. But the rest of it was really just Milwaukee-Eight stuff, how it goes together. The valve train's a little bit clackier than personally I like it, but that's how all the Screamin Eagle 515 cam setups I've ever done are. It's just kind of it's just a real clacky cam, that Screamin Eagle 515. So it is what it is. If you want to keep your bike under a factory warranty, that's what you got to do. You got to use that stuff. It ran pretty well with the street tuner. If you were just gonna do that whole kit in the street tuner at home, I wouldn't worry about it. It seemed to run just fine. It could be a little bit better. There were a few little areas as far as diesel noises, but you know, you're changing the whole exhaust system over to that Vance & Hines deal, so it's going to be a big difference anyways. But that's it. Glad to be finished with it. We're going to get on to the next project. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.